everybody. Welcome to the Concord School Board's Capital Facilities Committee meeting. Today is November
2nd.
And I am going to hand it immediately over to Matt. What we have tonight is a lot of information, which is often what we have at these meetings. I will do my best to simplify it for people that aren't in the construction business or the land acquisition business or the bond acquirement business, and do the best I can to make what he says make sense. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
All right. Thanks, Barb.
Our committee members are all here, with the exception of Pam.
Okay, so just a quick look at the agenda. What I wanted to do, what we wanted to do is talk about our request for qualifications process and what they look like, as well as a request for a proposal. And we're going to show a couple of examples. What I'd like to do is, when I'm done reading the agenda, is go right into kind of a layout timeline of what the process would look like and how long it would take. The other thing, and it's just a brief mention, that the ranking from DOE, which was suspected to be or expected to be at the end of December, they actually met, and they're going to make it public on the 10th on their website, but on the following Monday, they're going to release. So if you want a sneak peek, you can go on their website and see that. So I'll jump right into the difference between a RFQ and an RFP. And I would say what we had talked about in previous meetings is we would send out separate documents for an architect. So we'd look at what we talk about and decide on is either an RFQ for an architect or an RFP for an architect. And the same thing with a construction management firm, either an RFQ or an RFP. All right, and in this package we could look at tonight, you'll have examples. I've redacted the dates on it because it's more about the process and how long the process could take. So, request for qualifications, that's essentially like sending in your resume, applying for a job. It has certifications, projects that the firms have done with similar size and complexity, but it does not include fees or specifics on the work to be performed. So it's a tool that is used frequently. RFPs are used nowadays a little bit more, but they still do the RFQ process. So again, it's a qualification. If we were to send that out, we would get packages from the firms, and then we would start to evaluate and rank them. And we'd use a matrix. And I think when I get into the examples, I'll show a layout of what I would think it would look like so that we can grade and create criteria for the firms that we're looking at. And then if we were to go with an RFQ process, we could always go into an RFP process.
So an RFQ sort of, is it more timely, takes longer?
No, an RFQ can actually, let me answer that the right way. The process can take about the same amount of time. What you're asking for in the documents is a little bit more detail with fees than the RFP for proposal.
Right.
RFQ is just, are you qualified? Tell us, show me your resume, what certifications do you have, that sort of thing.
I've used the RFQ in projects, and it's really great because they have to give you all the detail. Who's working on the project? Who are the chief engineers, the architects, all the folks and their background, the projects that they've worked on. And, that can give you some insight. It doesn't hurt to call up somebody who did a project and say, hey, how did it go? So that's a nice way to evaluate and to bring in the best folks for those two positions that Matt described, the construction management and the architect engineer.
To create confidence.
Yeah, I think it's really important, and sometimes that process can be skipped. I would, Matt and I and Jack talked a lot about it, and I absolutely recommend that we do a RFQ process, and it doesn't take that long. And many companies are already prepared for those things. They have their materials all ready to go. Yeah. I mean, they're not, scurrying to put together or marketing their company. So it's not overwhelming.
So just a question.
Go ahead.
When you talk, Matt, about we will look at and we will evaluate, who's the we?
Well, we had talked about capital facilities committee members,
Okay, so the-
maybe reaching out and having a couple of other members to comprise a team. We would, having done this when we did the elementary schools, once the RFP or RFQ goes out, you get the submissions back from the companies, and then you divide them out. Everybody gets a package of what's been submitted.
Right.
And then on your own, you go through the package, you grade them, and then we meet and we create a matrix, and you go through and kind of rank everybody out based on your evaluation of the packages that were submitted.
I would just suggest that we make sure we have, I don't want that to be a big committee. I mean, I don't think that should,
No.
especially for an RFQ process, you know, once you get up 8 or 9 or 10, it becomes unwieldy. But I think it'd be good to have some input from the teachers at the middle school, maybe a parent, and
Maybe a neighborhood person?
yeah, or a neighborhood person. Yeah.
Okay.
I agree with the superintendent. I think we ought to probably do both an RFQ and a RFP process. And I guess my next question is how widely are we going to open up that RFQ process? I mean, are we looking
Well,
regionally, nationally, in-state, out-of-state?
well, we would certainly publicize it. It goes into the newspaper.
Right.
There's lots of eyes on a lot of what we're doing here, so I think word travels. I would think it could be a wide range of areas. I know when we did the elementary, and then early on when we did an RFP for architectural services back in 2017, 2018, we had a firm out of Florida. So it could, you don't know. It could be the,
Okay, but you're not going to limit it necessarily.
It's publicly posted, right? Like
it would be publicly
RFPs,
posted,
like,
so,
you don't really control, but
and word travels fast. And so, I mean, other firms might say, hey, Concord, New Hampshire has something going on. I think it's good to cast a wide net and see who's out there.
And once it's posted, there's journals, magazines that pick them up, and
Right.
they publish it because they service those companies
Right.
and get the word out. So
Okay,
I think
good.
you'll see a wide choice. And I also think that not for the RFQ, but certainly for the RFP process, once we receive their proposals, and perhaps we screen down and narrow down the ones we want, but there clearly should be a presentation by them. Come in,
Oh, yeah.
they present, talk about their firm and what they can do and their rates. All that is mixed in, but that's the second piece of it, not the RFQ, but when we do the RFP process.
Yeah. Okay.
So that was definitely a good segue into the RFP. So that document is a lot more detailed. You're going to get cost, you're going to get schedules and timelines. When I show you the examples, we show a history of what we've done with the middle school up to date. So it gives them a good running start. And then they do a deeper dive for the work that they would be doing. They list out their scope of service. Again, they would have their fees. This document would also have their qualifications and their team that they would have working the project. We would have that selection team go through just the same way with the RFQ, just the process would be the same. We would go through an evaluation and grading criteria. We would create a short list, and then we would line up interviews for the firms that we felt. And that's a really key part, because you're not just evaluating a firm on paper. You're actually seeing and talking to and asking questions of the team that you're going to be working with for the next 2.5, maybe 3 years. So it's important. It's like an interview for a job. You want to make sure you're meeting and talking and comfortable and that sort of thing. So I rolled in there too. after interviews, if we have time, it also helps to do tours of the sites that these firms have built or designed. We'd also, as part of this project, definitely do reference checks, not just with the people that they list on their proposal, but even other people that they didn't, because it's good to get a good look at it. And then you would evaluate and select. So what I also did, and again, I redacted, on the examples I'm going to show you, I redacted the dates because I think that's something that we need to go through. So just take release of an RFP or RFQ. Once you release it, this would be fast tracking a little bit, but we would look at about a 3-week period for the firms to put their stuff together. I think it would be important too, and we've done this before, is you have an on-site mandatory meeting. That's who's serious about wanting to work. They come, they show up, we record their names, their contact information. They would ask questions not just at that meeting, but they would also be able to email us for about a week. We'd give them about a week, and then we would have another week to deliver formal answers back. Then, again, we'd go through the evaluation and screening. It would take about 2 weeks. We're kind of in tough time with all the holidays, so that might be 3 weeks, but just to give you a general feel. Conduct interviews, and then we'd want to start talking about the awarding of the contract and have legal review of those documents ahead of time. So, it's approximately 13 weeks, about 3 months, and if you look at the timeline that we've all been working off of, we would want to bring on an architect on this project in the February timeframe. So this schedule does put us there. We would probably stagger the construction manager by maybe a month and a half, because you want to get the architectural team going, but you want to, like we talked about before, have a CM involved in the project so they can start doing early estimating with designs. They can look at pre-construction type things, materials. As you know, we have the supply chain issues that we have to contend with. So those are just food for thought. Those are things that we would be needing to be evaluating. Before I go in and I show the actual documents that are under draft, there's nothing, I just want a chance to go through them with you, look at the criteria. The other thing too to keep in mind, none of this is binding. So if we go out and we choose to go longer or whatever, nothing on here is binding. It's just simply laying out a schedule based on our timeline that
So
we
if
have.
something were to happen that changed the course,
You're not bound
make
to
an adjustment.
anything.
and
You
it's
sure
not like,
can.
We have to do this because we said, okay.
Yeah,
That's
no,
all.
you don't.
Yeah.
No, you've got wiggle room.
Matt, do you think 3 weeks is enough time on the release of the RFP? You're telling me that gives them 3 weeks to present a proposal?
Well, no, that's when we release either the RFQ or RFP. In about 3 weeks from there, then I bring them in for a meeting on site. That gives them an
Our
extra
3 weeks,
couple
not our
weeks.
3 weeks.
Yeah, so maybe I should have
Even I got
clarified
that.
that.
All right.
So now you got 6 weeks, and then you got another week for.
It's lengthy in terms of the work.
It is, and there's a lot of work on this end too. They're doing their work, but we're also waiting for their packages, getting them to the team members, meeting, scheduling interviews. We've done back-to-back interviews. I would think probably do something like that. But all right. Does anyone have any questions before I just go over and look at some samples that we put together that are really particular to Concord, but again, this is pretty common, typical type stuff.
I have a question for Bob before we go on. You talked about whether we should look at this from a local, regional, state, national. Do you have a preference? Because, you know, that often will come up from the perspective of a board, you know, we want to stay local. Or we
Yeah,
wanna stay
I don't think I-
statewide, or, you know, I mean, I just want to get a feel for you before, you know, if that's an important element, you know, we need to consider that.
I'm conflicted. I guess I want to get the best team that we possibly can. Having said that, I want to make sure that at least state firms are reasonably considered. I don't want to automatically, move to Boston or New York. So I think it's, and that's only my preference. I haven't talked to other board members about that. But I think it's important to support local. And by local, I don't mean Concord by any means. I know our current architect is not local in that sense, and that's fine. And again, I think my preference is to have the best product possible. So,
I just want to.
but it's a consideration.
Sorry. I want to piggyback off that a bit. So I'm the same way. I really, really support, I'm a big believer in local business. I also know that sometimes local business can be all caught up in local politics and local dogma and local he said, she said, and you're so involved in your local that you can't step back sometimes. And sometimes local businesses can be Pennsylvania's local business, some nice local Pennsylvania business that isn't a big national chain, but has that small town feel, but has no agenda in Concord. So sometimes, so what I'm trying to say is I think that sometimes we need to look further than local meaning where we live and look at local and what does local mean. Well, Bethlehem, Pennsylvania might have a great company who's committed to Bethlehem that would do an amazing job for us because they get the multicultural small town feel. Does that make sense? So I think sometimes a far-reaching doesn't mean we're hiring Walmart instead of, prescription center. I'm using big and local here. But I think it would be a good thing I think we should keep our, am I rambling or do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I know exactly what
Yeah,
you're saying. I
yeah.
think that does make sense.
David?
Yeah, and to remember, I mean, a lot of the labor will be done by local contractors.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
They're hired for a good portion of this. The architecture and, the planning, those guys could come from anywhere as far as I'm concerned. I mean, it's going to be a lot of local business out of this.
Right.
So-
But the local mindset.
Yeah.
This is a community and we want
Right.
to work with
I
the
agree.
community. Yeah.
I would also say because it's construction, it's design, when the process really gets going and we start constructing, we're meeting weekly, and the people that need to be at the table are the architects and the construction folks. And I mean the people that are decision makers for that team. So I think just by nature of that might,
Some of them will become local.
so I think just the natural characteristics of that style of construction,
Yeah,
what we're trying to
yeah.
do, I think that would hone in more regional firms. That's what,
Yeah.
because it would be a very demanding schedule for every week a construction meeting and having them there. So just some basic, 3 hard copies. We establish a date that the packages need to arrive, how they're sealed. We record them when they come in. Again, this is a lot. I don't want to read the whole thing to you, but it talks a little bit about the in-person tour. Again, I can't stress enough how important that is. That too shows commitment on the firm's side. We would talk about the selection criteria. Again, a lot of this is cookbook, but I want to just go into this section here and show you. It talks about the purpose and background history. So it talks about a little snapshot of what we've done. We point them to the website where we have a lot of archived information from late 2016 on all the way through. Our Building 8 application is on there. Talks a little bit more about what we're looking for in a partnership with an architect, in this case, going through the recent and getting into schematic design. talks a little bit about the site, talks about the size and the capacity, as well as the square footage of what's in for building aid. And then we get into, it's like you're given a homework assignment. This is what we're asking them to respond back with. Good, important things to have in knowing whether this firm is qualified enough or is the right fit. Does anyone want to look through that or talk any more about that? We did
Just-
cover a lot of it, but
I haven't had a chance to review it, but two things jump out to me. G down there, 50 million to 100 million.
we're trying to.
Last thing I saw was 176. So we
It
might
was,
wanna
but that
expand
was
a little bit.
with everything in there.
Yeah.
And so that was also conservative with a market that we anticipate will change. So
Yeah.
I put that in there, and again, this is in a draft form, but I put that in there because we want a design firm and a construction firm that has proof and has been able to handle a complex job of that size.
And the emphasis,
Is
from
more
my
on the
point of
dollar.
view, is not on the low end of that number, it's more on the upper end, but clearly, yeah, somebody who is able to do a big project. The other thing I want to make sure is emphasized is, and I think this is partly covered by the LEED certification, but making sure that we have somebody who's very conversant with green architecture, if you will, and those kind of issues.
Okay.
That's often part of their presentation. You'll see them present that they had a certain level of award for their building based on the criteria that the LEED has
Right.
for a building. So that's why I like the RFQ, because you get
Oh, yeah.
that kind of information.
Yeah, I think when we put numbers out there, the public gets concerned because they don't know what that means. When you say 150 million, they don't know that means all the bells and whistles, and we need to do a better job as a board to get that information articulated. Also, the location. Has it been established that the Runlet location is the location? We went through a lot of criticism because people didn't feel that they had a say in it, and they did have a say in it, and we didn't decide, and we weren't in a position to decide until we had to decide. But is this what we're left? Is this the decision? And what is the? I see the range is 50 to 100, but that doesn't mean anything if you don't know what that includes. So I think I'm not asking for that information now, but I'm just thinking. From a public's perspective, we can do a better job to articulate some of those things.
Right, but that line in there, David, under D, is not about our project, it's about, has this company worked on projects?
I understand. Okay, well, that's a clarification. I do understand that too.
176
So I think-
is still not at all been solidified, haven't touched it, it was only based on.
Right. But I've gotten feedback from folks that there is a distinction between this and what I'm talking about, actually, so sorry about that. But, yeah, I think we need to articulate the money and the location and get feedback. So, anyway, thank you.
John?
I know we had a big discussion about what kind of grades would be included. Should that be included in some of the qualifications? Because I think working on a K through 8 school setting, working on a 5 through 8 might be different.
So a couple references to that. Under E, at the very end, specifically middle school design, and then on G, school design of.
No. I guess what I'm asking is, since we decided and voted that the school would be 6th through 8th grade, that would be different than a 5th through 8th grade middle school or a school that is K through 8 in middle school. So,
Just-
In particular about the
About what they've done?
Yeah.
Do we think that's important? Yeah. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Because there are a lot of, as we talked about, there are a lot of 5/8s. So, good point.
Yeah.
So included in this, references and other professional firms, description of, I think this is an important thing, and we've done this in the past, is it's always good for them to disclose if they've been in past litigations or arbitrations, because I think it's important to know everything you can about a firm before you begin the selection process. And I think, that's good to know. You're going to be working with them for a while, so it's good to know what type of firm they are. And then I just go on here to explain how the process will work. I feel like this is a good layout. So this would, very similar with what we opened with. Over here, obviously, would have dates.
Right.
But it shows the sequencing. It's good for the firms to know that too, because they might say, God, I really want that job, but I can't, our schedule, we're booked out 2 years. We couldn't hit that timeline. So it's good to just be totally upfront and showing them what we have. Again, we talk a little bit about more protections for the district as we go through the qualifications. Again, a lot of this has been through legal review. We would do it again just to make sure. We talk a little bit about retainage and how that works on a little bit of holdback. It's just common stuff that you would do on a construction
Contract.
site. Liquidated damages, it doesn't finish on the time that you have damages, you assign an amount. And so
One question or something I haven't seen. Maybe it is in here. I haven't seen it all, but like to know about their insurance coverage. I think, and
okay.
What they're covered for.
Usually we put a bonding statement
Yeah,
in there, but
yeah.
we would do.
Yeah.
Okay. And again, so RFQ, slightly different for the architect, but not much for the construction management company. And again, we lay out the criteria. This is what they would be expecting to see with the modifications we talked about and dates in there. The pre-bid, like we talked about, the history is the same. I kept that same language, whether it was an RFP or RFQ. And then the selection criteria for a construction management firm. Number of years in business is obviously important. It's good to know the principals along with their resumes and their qualifications, but also for the team members that you're going to be working with during the project. And I'll make this adjustment too, but I think it's important for a construction firm to go over the past 10 years and give us a range for what size projects they did. If it's a firm that's done a couple of $1 million on a whole bunch of projects, but this is a highly complex, larger scale project, we just want to know that in our evaluation criteria. Again, we talk about references, total dollar amount. What I thought I wanted to add in here too with construction firms is, when you submit the package, tell us what your previous project's original bid amount was. And then when it closed, let's see what it ended at. Because you just want to, I like all of the cards on the deck. You want to make sure you know what change orders look like and if they have a tendency to, incur a lot of change orders on their job. So again, just trying to cover all of the bases. And I felt like 10 years is a good, solid amount of time, especially with during the COVID and slowdowns. And again, litigation, like we talked about. Timeline and all the other legal stuff. So I feel like I'm skipping through this quick, and I don't want to. If there's any questions.
No, it's very clear.
Did we?
One little nitpick on the district qualifications.
I'm sorry.
One little nitpick on the district
Yeah, please.
qualifications I just found. The district retains the right to waive any informalities, to reject any or all proposals, or to accept any proposals he may determine to be in his best interest. I think it should be the district or
The district.
there,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
something.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
It's the lawyer in me coming out.
No, that's it. We would definitely want to put this through legal one more time just to make sure. And again, Barbara, Kathleen, I don't know, do you want me to go through the typical RFP just to show a little bit?
Well, perhaps
or do
just
you have a good-
enunciate the change, how it would be different. So we have the RFQ process,
RFQ?
I don't know that I need to be walked through the entire RFP, but how is that different?
RFQ is going to be more broad. It's going to be, hey, here's my qualifications. As Kathleen said, a lot of these firms already have their standard package. They're used to receiving and submitting for RFQs. An RFP, though, is going to drive down a little bit more detail. So it's going to require them to do a deep dive and then come back with timelines, fees, more particulars about the project that you're looking at, having them bid on.
So why would a district choose one over the other? Like Kathleen is very
Well-
supportive of an RFQ.
No, we should do both.
Oh,
I think
okay,
that's- We'll
so
do
it's not
both,
one or the
yeah.
other.
Yeah.
RFQ first and then comes the
You
RFP?
get like, your RFQ, you get responses, right? You look at them, you see some really strong ones, you're really interested.
Mhm.
You want to encourage them to, respond to the RFP.
Okay.
Right? But
It's like,
Got it.
it's
Okay,
like you
okay,
send
okay,
in your,
okay.
you
Right.
send in your resume
Yeah.
but then they ask you, why are you good for this job?
Right, as opposed to, okay,
Like a pre-screening.
Yeah, yeah.
So that said, we could shorten the RFQ process, get to our shortlist, and go out with an RFP.
Yeah, we could
Right.
develop a short list from that RFQ. I'm a little, we get really good, so that's who you encourage to respond to the RFP. I'm a little leery of that, because there might be somebody out there that didn't respond to the RFQ, that responds to the RFP, and gives us kind of good information. So I think it,
right.
that could happen, so I don't want to eliminate anything. I
No.
don't want to close the door to anyone or to any company. But your RFQ is going to really give you an idea of who's out there and who can do this kind of job, whatever that number is.
Right.
As David said, we're not there yet, but I think it's going to help you. You can't, if you have a company that presents their qualifications and they've only done buildings 25 to 50 million.
Right.
And now you've got 100 and whatever that number is.
Or K to 8s
You
and not
wonder,
6 to 8s, right,
are
right,
they
no, I get
gonna
it.
be able to
Yeah.
do they have the capacity to do a big project
Right.
like this? That to me is
Right,
a big issue.
Right.
And I wanna know what kind of reach they have, when we did the job in Hampton, we were really struggling for some particular kinds of items like, wallboard, we got a company out of Boston because we couldn't get anybody locally to do all the sheetrock and all that. So, you want somebody who's got the capacity or the ability to reach out and get those things that you need.
right,
And so you want to make sure you have a company that is able to do that.
right. Well, so, David, Bob, you both have a lot more experience in this than I do. What would you like to hear from Matt around the RFP process?
I think he's explained it pretty
Right,
well,
right.
and I don't think we need to go through the actual request for proposal, because it's still very much in draft stage at
Right.
It
at
is.
this
Right.
point.
Right. Jonathan, do you have any questions? Okay.
And again, I developed this timeline right here. I had to try, I looked at where we had talked previously on with building aid, when you'd want to have an architect. Again, really want to emphasize for this project, I think architect would be the first area we want to focus on,
Right.
and then shortly, right on the heels of that, have a CM come in. So that, again, with the state that we're in with supply chain and shortages on materials, it's important to get early estimating done as the design process is going through. So we would want to stagger that just a little bit, but do it in that type of a sequence.
And we kind of go through, I think, the same process, correct me if I'm wrong, when we actually go out and hire the guys that are going to do the digging, you know?
Right,
I mean,
right.
It's, the construction manager is just the person that's going to be our eyes and ears on the ground to, you know.
Well, so maybe I should clear that. A construction firm can operate with a mode of construction management. So they would
Yeah.
have a project manager, they'd have an estimating team, but they would also, in that scenario, they would also be the contractor for
They might be the
job.
general contractor.
They could be the general contractor. In the industry they call buying the job out. So they would get the all the subs lined up, all the bonding for them, the capacity for them, the quality of the work that they do. So that's the clarity point. It wouldn't be.
That's what you're paying for a project manager, correct?
Well,
Essentially for
we had
half
talked.
years.
That's what I was going to perform, like I did in the past, and have throughout even smaller projects that we do. We would bring in a construction firm, but with a construction management approach.
Right.
So it's not just strictly a contractor coming in and then we're hiring every ounce of it. They're part of it through the whole process.
They're the general contractor who hires all the other contractors.
Correct.
Right.
But our seat is reserved at the table because from the owner's perspective, we're looking out for the school district and working with the architect and the construction firm with their construction manager or the project manager for the project. And they would have project site supervisors on the project as well.
What we were thinking was that Matt would be the district's eyes and ears on the project.
Which he should be, I think.
Exactly, and Matt did that with the 3 schools, the elementary schools that were built 10, 12 years ago. That was his responsibility, so we talked, Matt and I talked extensively about this, that he would be the ears and eyes, along with, Jack and I will be sitting at the table for these meetings also, but Matt will be the one that will be in daily conversation with the construction management team, so that our, the protection of the district. Obviously we want the district protected at all costs, so.
I'm just curious about this, but Matt, who's going to do your day job?
Yeah.
You know,
What
I mean,
hours
in
you
other
gonna
words,
do
He does his day
this-
job at night, is what I think.
Well, no,
And weekends.
No, seriously.
Great question,
Yeah.
and we did, Matt and I
Yeah.
talked about that too, because you can't burn both ends of the candle on
Right.
it, so, that we would have to have somebody, to do some
That's
of
what I
the
mean.
day jobs that Matt does, making sure that, certain things are done, any kind of
Right.
challenges that might happen in the building that need correction, and being out there and responding to the custodians in the
Right.
building, so.
We had more staff back then
We did have
under
more
you,
staff.
Warren, up at the high school.
We had
We had-
him and
we had people that-
Peter Johnson.
Yeah, right,
So-
yeah. He had a lot of help back then,
Well,
so.
Yeah.
part of our job as a board is to make sure that we treat our employees well.
Right.
And that includes administrators, and I don't want to burn Matt out, and so, I'm sure you've thought about this, but.
We have.
did,
Okay,
Yeah.
and,
good.
Because we really have great trust in the work that Matt does, and we know that he can't do the day-to-day things. When there's a toilet that's
Right.
overflowing somewhere, or a water pipe that doesn't wanna, help us out by a burst, or whatever it does.
Or a mouse moves into your
or a
house.
mouse,
Right.
You have a mouse in your house. We don't have any mice, we don't have any mice right now, today.
I'm gonna find him and bring him along.
But we need to have somebody, Dave, you're absolutely right. We haven't decided what that's gonna
Right,
look like.
right.
We
No,
won't do
I'm
anything until
sure. It
we'll
just
bring it to
occurred
you.
to me.
We'll bring it to the board.
Yeah.
with a proposal.
Yeah.
We're not quite there yet.
Oh, no, I wouldn't expect you to.
What else, Matt?
Well, again, we talked about DOE is going to release, I think, early at
Yeah.
the 10th, and then we would know. You could check the website. We'll be checking it that morning, I'm sure, right away. Or
So all of our conversations
Midnight.
right now are founded on the hope that we have this money and we can move along.
Right, right.
We will have a whole bunch of different conversations, should we not be on the list or be significantly back. And so, again, I always compare so many things on the school board as hands in a black velvet box developing film. You don't know what you're doing, but you hope you're doing it right. And so much of what our decisions have to be made, and we don't have the information we need to make them properly when people want to hear them.
And
So we
and-
just have to be,
Right, and I think Jack said it early on. I mean, you have to remember, there were 17 proposals. Some of those were multiple schools in a district, so they have a very different process than in Concord.
right.
So when I had my project in Hampton, which was the last one I did, I had to go to the voters. I had to bring a bond to the voters for them to vote on. And it's a 60%. You have to have a 60% vote in favor of the project or it doesn't pass. So that's a tough hurdle for a lot of places. So
We don't have that.
even if somebody is ahead of us on that list, they may not be able to
Access the money because it doesn't pass
exactly
in their
because their
town.
community said, we're not ready to do
Right,
that
right.
tax-wise or what, for whatever reasons, you know. First time I did it, we were in by the way, it was a nor'easter, and we lost by 38 votes. Oh my God, I was heartbroken. And the second time, we had, again, a terrible weather, and we won by 13 votes. So, it's that tough to get it through, and we had a great turnout. But,
But in terms of, just in terms of politics, that also requires some responsibility on the public to get in there and see
Well,
what's
it's-
going on.
that's right.
And, it's been interesting, with the commission and everything else, and people's response sometimes to me that they don't know what's going on. When you actually get to vote on it, it's different. But
Right.
so we have a larger responsibility, I think,
Of getting the
to
word out.
getting the word
Right.
out and getting
Right.
it out effectively so that people are hearing it.
Right.
And I think we try.
Well, I think
I'm on
once you
communication,
have,
so-
it's been tough right now, but once you have determination that you have funding and that you can make some decisions down the road about the site, then you can really go out and do,
Right.
meet with groups, meet with your community, and, we have a city and community relations committee that's dying to do this work, right, John? You know what I mean, Dave? It's gonna take
No,
that.
I understand that. I understand that, but I
Social
just
media is
expressing that-
huge.
The concern sometimes that people have,
Yeah.
and we have a very unique situation on the board, which adds also a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
Because we're not, given a lot of leeway, which is really nice, but it's also.
But then we vote on our budget and nobody comes.
I know.
So it's frustrating sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a really difficult path to travel.
Or, can I ask you a question?
Oh, of course.
For the application that we submitted to DOE, I know we proposed 2 potential site locations. Is the school district locked into one of those 2 potential or if we were to find another location, would we still be able to qualify for the funding?
My sense is that the application was never based on a site. Now,
Right.
we
It was
put
based on the
in
project.
potential, I mean, we had a responsibility, we weren't walking around with blinders on, right? So, we were looking at the place on Clinton, and certainly, the current site where the middle school is, has always been the default site, right? But if the board says, wait a minute, and somebody knocks on our door and says, I'd like to donate 55 acres to the school district in downtown Concord, you would say, I'd be happy to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So so to make a long story short, it is not dependent on the
It doesn't
site.
lock it.
No.
Yeah, unless you change the scope of your project, then we have a different story,
Right.
okay? But from what we proposed to them in the application, as well as when we met with them at Runlet.
Great.
You're still kind of in like, it's still foggy, and it's hard for people, you know, when it's like this, but we're getting there, slowly but surely.
Well, it's a
It's a
big
great
project.
question, though, John.
It's- You know, it affects a lot of people in a lot of different ways. It's not lost on any of us. So, I mean,
I know one thing, we spend a lot of time and effort and money at Runlet trying to keep it up. and
oh, I
running.
know, I know.
Gotta,
That's been years.
yeah, you have to
My
understand
first
that.
year on the board,
Right.
Nick Metalius in the
Oh,
bathroom.
yeah.
Do you
Yeah,
remember?
I remember.
We're gonna
The
plant
bathroom
flowers. No, we're
renovation.
not. We're fixing a bathroom, and that was in 2012,
Yep.
2013, a long time ago. So no, this is not a new issue. I get it, and we have to, you know, because then, worst case scenario, we're not on the list at all, and there's no money for us.
Right.
Now we have another whole conversation to have, and what do we do? And then we have this building that we have to keep safe and workable. So.
Yeah.
I just keep emphasizing, this doesn't bind us to do anything. What it does is it helps us look at firms, qualify firms,
Right.
and keep going with the process.
As if it could
And
happen.
then
Absolutely.
we can decide whatever with what happens with the DOE. But I think to pull back and not do it, we're just now losing more time.
No. We have to move forward as if it's all going to happen.
Right.
Absolutely. I agree. I just want to thank you for all your hard work.
Sure.
This is
Yeah.
a lot of information. And
Yeah, thanks,
I
man.
know it was a relatively shorter meeting. I know that breaks a lot of
I know
people's
it really
hearts.
hurts me
but
because I want to go home to the rats, the mice in my house.
They probably are now.
Oh, but
So any other questions?
no, does anyone else have anything to ask or say? All right, Matt, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we'll be in touch, and we have so many agenda items for future meetings that I won't be bored. Awesome. All right, I would move I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming, ladies. All right.